Well, here we go, folks. Another election and another 3 pages of confusing ballot language that make you feel like you don't know your right from your left. Somehow, our government expertly fits each initiative into a 3-paragraph run-on question. So we've got your cheat sheet for the Colorado statewide ballot questions, so you can bubble in that bubble. Proposition 118 is about the reintroduction and management of gray wolves in Colorado. That's pretty badass. I used to only see wolves in the wallpaper of my childhood best friend's bedroom, so this is pretty exciting to me. She was really into wolves. A yes vote supports bringing the wolves back. Proponents say it's time to reintroduce gray wolves to Colorado and restore natural balance to ecosystems like it did in Yellowstone. The wolves could also naturally prevent the spread of disease by taking vulnerable animals out of the population. Opponents worry the gray wolves would affect recreation, livestock, and endangered species living in Colorado. Even though, if passed, Colorado Parks and Wildlife would be tasked with paying fair compensation to owners of lost livestock. Amendment B is all about repealing the Gallagher Amendment. Fortunately, this has nothing to do with everyone's favorite melon murdering comedian. Millennials, Gen Z, just Google it. Or really don't. You know what? Yeah, you don't have to. You might have been a TikTok star though. And has more to do with property taxes. Basically, homeowners have saved billions on the taxes they pay on their homes since the Gallagher Act was enacted in 1982. Great, right? But of course, this is at the expense of non-residential property owners paying 4 times more, and of tax revenue of local budgets. So property tax revenue is collected locally and stays within that county. It funds the county government, public schools, junior colleges in that area, so this lack of revenue has a greater effect on rural communities. Those in favor, so a yes vote, say it's time for wealthy residential property owners to chip in more. I mean, for an average homeowner with a $300,000 house, the increase would raise their annual taxes by roughly $200. I mean, paying in to support property tax reliant public services like schools and firefighters is necessary during this dire time. It'll also alleviate small businesses from footing more of the bill, which we all know right now could stop a small business from closing their doors. Those opposed, so a no vote, say we're in a pandemic and you can't expect homeowners to pay a higher tax rate. It'll be a tax break to large corporations, aka non-residential property owners, and not help citizens and small businesses. Amendment 76 changes the Colorado Constitution from stating every citizen to only a citizen of the US 18 years of age can vote in an election. So basically, we're going from inclusionary language to exclusionary language. Really not a good look or policy, community. Proponents say it'll prohibit non-citizen voting. That's not a thing. And honor the intent of the Constitution by preventing 17-year-olds to vote in primaries because they'll be 18 by the general election, and we wouldn't want young people to vote, would we? The very, very long list of opponents from ACLU Colorado to Colorado for a Common Cause say this amendment is all about suppressing voter turnout and is a solution to a non-existent problem. It's a racist attack against Colorado immigrants that will not only confuse citizen immigrant voters, but take away the right of 17-year-olds to vote in primaries. A yes vote is to change the language to only a citizen, and a no vote maintains the language to every citizen. Amendment C is all about nonprofits having greater access and capacity for gaming at fundraising events, so hosting a bingo or a raffle. Remember walking out of a nonprofit fundraiser, spent sipping donated wine into a new future with your improv classes in one hand and your painting of a sunset in the other that you just had to outbid Mark for? You had a lot of donated wine. A yes vote supports decreasing the number of years an organization exists before it can acquire a gaming permit from 5 to 3 years, allowing greater access. It also allows nonprofits to hire managers and game operators from their community. So instead of relying on volunteers, they're actually paying people for their time and expertise. A no vote opposes these changes. Proposition 116, if passed, would decrease the state's income tax rate from 4.63% to 4.55%. Opponents note it would cut the state budget by more than $150 million per year, but would only save the average individual taxpayer $37 a year. I wonder who would benefit from these changes then. rich people. They also note that in the midst of a recession and a diminishing tax base, we can't afford to lose more funding for education and public services. Proponents say because we're in a pandemic, now more than ever, business owners and individuals need to keep more of their own money in their pockets. You know, by saving the $37 a year and then also skipping my avocado toast, I think I'll have enough money to buy a house and start a family, right? A yes votes to decrease the income tax rate by 0.08%. A no vote keeps the tax rate where it is, which is among the lowest of any state in the country. Proposition 115 supports prohibiting abortion after 22 weeks, because it wouldn't be an election without people telling women, and yes, we recognize not all pregnant people are women, what to do with their own bodies. This is what the right has deemed late-term abortions, only which represent less than 1% of yearly cases. These are women that typically expect to carry the baby to term. They are planning out their baby room. They are making their partners go get them a chicken club sandwich at 4 a.m. They are watching their belly grow, only to find out the devastating news that the health of the mother is in jeopardy, their own health, or the viability of their pregnancy is in jeopardy, their baby's health. This measure has no exceptions for rape and incest, and it has no exceptions for maternal health. Their own health. A yes vote, if passed, would not allow pregnant people to have an abortion after 22 weeks. Proponents of this bill would make that choice for a pregnant person, forcing them to either leave their family and go to another state with access to healthcare or carry the child to term, no matter the consequence for the child or the mother. An opponent of this bill, a no vote, would keep the government out of that decision and allow a pregnant person to decide what is best for them and their family. Proposition 117 supports requiring voter approval for statewide enterprises. Enterprises are government-owned businesses that provide goods or services for a fee. So we're talking Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the DMV, the state lottery. For supporters, Proposition 117 is an expansion of the voter protection provided by TABOR, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, which makes voters approve every tax increase in Colorado. They say that legislators get around TABOR by leaning heavily on these enterprises. Opponents say it's unnecessary and will make it harder for legislators to fund public services. We already have chronic underfunding in K-12 education, higher education, and transportation. So if you think this video is long, just wait until they add all that shit to the ballot. A yes vote supports requiring voter approval for these enterprises. A no vote opposes these changes. Proposition 118 supports paid family and medical leave in Colorado and would provide 12 weeks of paid leave funded through a payroll tax paid by employers and employees in a 50-50 split. Currently, 80% of Coloradans don't have paid family or medical leave, even though at some point everyone could really use the support. To get a sense of cost, for the first 2 years of the program, so 2023 and 2024, the premiums would be less than 1% of the employee's wage. Your boss pays half and you pay half. Opponents say in the wake of a pandemic, now is not the time for Coloradans to pay a higher payroll tax. It could affect the bottom line for small business, even though employers with less than 10 employees would not pay into the program. Proponents say during a pandemic is exactly the right time for this. I mean, employees shouldn't have to choose between paying their bills and taking care of themselves, a family member, or a new addition to the family. A yes vote supports bringing paid family and medical leave to Colorado, and a no vote opposes it. Amendment 77 wants to put local voters in control of bet limits and games in casino towns.
All right, pick a card, any card, huh? I don't know what I'm doing, I don't gamble.
A yes vote puts these decisions into the town's hands. Proponents think local voters in these towns should have more control over their local economies and set these gaming standards for themselves. Opponents, a no vote, say this could have a negative impact by increasing gambling addictions in other communities that don't get to vote on these restrictions and won't see any of the tax revenue. Proposition EE is about taxing nicotine products like e-cigarettes and increasing taxes on tobacco products like cigarettes in order to provide greater funding to health and education programs. Currently, our state doesn't tax e-cigarettes, so a yes vote on EE would support creating a tax on nicotine products that would match that of tobacco. Proponents see this as an opportunity to drive down tobacco and nicotine use while providing funding for preschool. Opponents say the tax will hurt tobacco users who are usually minorities or have lower incomes. But with big tobacco companies behind the campaign, it's hard to imagine that they care about anyone but their bottom line. But it could also potentially hurt small business, like locally owned gas stations, by driving down revenue. This leaves us with the big one, Proposition 113. If you want to help dismantle the antiquated and racist system of the Electoral College, this is your moment. The yes vote on 113 supports Colorado joining the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which would give the state's 9 electoral votes to the presidential candidate who wins the national popular vote. A no vote would continue to give the state's 9 electoral votes to the presidential candidate who wins Colorado. Opponents say this is theft of our votes and that the current system gives the minority a voice, even though you would have a voice because you're part of the national popular vote. Proponents say one person, one vote. Everybody's voice in the nation should count equally, no matter where you live. So although we just got our ballots in the mail, if you're watching this and you haven't turned your ballot in already, you need to get on it. I'm really not about any type of shame, but with this, I just don't give a f***. Honestly, we have barely skimmed the surface here, so I encourage you to deepen your knowledge, bubble in your bubbles, get 3 friends to vote, and turn in your ballot early. Like and subscribe for more content. Just kidding. It's like the only thing I've ever made.